What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the episode of the NFL Universe. I'm joined with Max today.
What's up, guys?
And Week 11 happens. We'll cover Week 12, but first I wanted to cover a little bit of the news that happened during Week 11. Glad to have you guys back. Without further ado, one thing that I wanted to cover straight off the bat, which me and Max were just talking about, Chris Carson is officially out for the year. He's going to have spinal fusion surgery. So that's kind of huge in my opinion. Obviously puts him out for the year, but in terms of an injury like that, I question his longevity in the NFL because, ACLs are pretty big injuries, but you can somewhat recover from them. But spinal fusion surgery, rather, you're taking the vertebrae of the spine, two bones of the spine, fusing them together. Most of the time it's to relieve pain, relieve an injury. What that does essentially is limit your mobility. I don't know where the exact vertebrae that his spine is being fused, but it limits your mobility a little bit in terms of your back. And in the NFL, flexibility is huge, especially for longevity running backs. Their ability to bend as they get tackled is what allows them to not get injured. So it is a little concerning to me. I don't know how it's really going to affect Chris Carson's career, but obviously I can say that it's not a good thing. Max, you have any comments on that?
I mean, also I was going to say he's 27 years old and he's getting right by the age where you start to be aging for a running back, and with that kind of surgery, it's going to be really tough for him. Let's also talk. I'm sure we're going to talk about later. The Seahawks team is just a dumpster fire now. It seems like over the past year they don't have the first round pick. It's obviously they traded for Jamal Adams.
Yeah,
their running back is probably never going to be the same. They might need to replace him, and now you have to wonder, is Russell Wilson going to demand out of there? I think he should.
I agree with you. So moving on from there, we have the Bears. They're probably on the verge of firing Matt Nagy. I believe at the Chicago Bulls game, as well as the football game, I believe, as well as his kids' football game. I've heard the fire Nagy chants have been roaring through the crowds. So apparently, there's a news source that tells Pash, the news source I believe around Chicago, that Matt Nagy's last game will be the Thanksgiving game coming up. So keep a lookout for that. David Bakhtiari had a arthroscopic surgery. He won't practice or play again this week, but there's optimism he'll be back for stretch of the run. Texans cut Philip Lindsay, which I just find kind of interesting because it's like he's had such a fall from grace because he had that fantastic year coming out of Colorado undrafted and then going onto the scene and having a fantastic year.
One carry on Sunday for a negative 3 yards.
And he just has not been the same since. And it's just like, what happened to him? Going on from there, Adrian Peterson was cut by the Titans, but I'm sure Max will cover the entire Titans team. What a game that was this past week. But and then finally, in terms of Giants news, the Giants wound up firing Jason Garrett, which as a Giants fan, I'm sort of happy about because I thought Jason Garrett personally had potential, and I think he somewhat may have potential in the NFL. He did not work with the Giants and their personnel well. Kenny Golladay has hardly touched the field. Even when he's been healthy, he's hardly touched the field. Saquon obviously is injured. Kadarius Toney, Tony has pretty much not touched the field as much as he needs to. He had that one game where he 14 receptions, 189 yards. And it's like, if he's capable of that, feed him the ball more. And he just really has not been receiving the ball. So it's just, it's the use of personnel that I think Jason Garrett really lacked on him. They had him on a short lease and they let him go. And I think the Giants are getting smarter in terms of keeping their coaches on a short leash rather than letting them run amok and then absolutely burning the team down and ruin culture. I was happy as they fired him. I do question David Gettleman. You got to be next, right? Because our personnel isn't great either.
All the coaches and everything has changed. What hasn't all these years?
David Gettleman. That is a big part of the issue. And as much as Jason Garrett didn't use our personnel, what personnel do we really have at the end of the day? I mean, we have very limited personnel. So it starts from the top down. Me and Max will always say that. It always starts from the top down. That is very important. So I think that covers all of our news off the bat for the week. So going into the games of Week 11,
I do want to comment something on the Bears and Matt Nagy. So I probably could have gone to this earlier, but did you hear Jalen Johnson in his press conference earlier this week, after the game? He basically said we the players were tired of the same stuff it's always all talk in the locker room saying we got to figure out what we're doing next game, all this raw stuff, but it just never works. Like they're saying his message is just going stale by the day. And as far as the news about him being fired after Thanksgiving, Matt Nagy has said that's inaccurate. And I honestly, if you're going to fire him, just fire him right then and there. Don't even let him coach. Obviously, all this is just speculation. You can't believe anything until you just see it for your own eyes. But like, it's only a matter of time before Matt Nagy's out of there. And if you're going to fire, if you're going to say you're going to fire him after the Thanksgiving game, then just fire him. Don't even let him coach that game. There's no point.
I agree with you, and I'm kind of have mixed reviews on Matt Nagy as well, because when he stepped into the league and from what I've seen throughout his tenure as the Bears head coach, I've liked some of his play call. I don't think it's been horrible. His personnel, when you look at this Bears team, the players he's done on the team have not really allowed him to win. I mean, you haven't really put Matt Nagy in a good position to win when you don't really have a starting quarterback for how many years. You had Mitch Trubisky, and how much did Matt Nagy play in a part of keeping Mitch Trubisky for all those years instead of just moving on to the next quarterback? I don't know, but then you had Andy Dalton, you have a young Fields, so it's like what do you want him to do, especially at the quarterback position? Wide receiver wise, they've been pretty lackluster for a year. Allen Robinson was decent, but then on defense, beyond Khalil Mack, who's actually now out for the year, that was part of the news that I had missed. There you go. You lose Khalil Mack for the year. Who do you really have on that defensive line besides maybe like Akeem Hicks?
I mean, with Matt Nagy, it probably has way less to do with the talent on the field and more just like it's more internal, because Jalen Johnson said is pretty indicative of what I'm guessing what all the players feel like. His play calling has been suspect a lot of times, in my opinion, because they try to throw the ball way too much with Trubisky instead of just running it with David Montgomery. I don't know. There's a lot of things wrong with it. It's probably got to do with way more than just play calling on the field, because he was a pretty decent offensive coordinator for the Chiefs. So maybe he can get another role, something like that, or has to work his way back up there. I don't see him as someone who's never going to be having a job again. Just as a head coach, it's not working out.
That's true. Did you think about the Bears running back for? It's probably of their personnel, it's probably the best positions that they've had between Montgomery, Cohen. So it's just a lot of talent there that they could have been using if they haven't. But I guess moving on from there, going to Week 11 games. First game of the week: Patriots Falcons. Patriots absolutely dominate the Falcons 25-0. Bigger lose the storyline, I guess, because this game was sort of irrelevant because the Falcons are somewhat of a mess. They won it. They've snuck a couple games in terms of the win column, but they're just not really competitive. The Patriots, on the other hand, are I believe 4 or 5 games on a win streak now. They've really turned this.
We'll get to it later, but they're first in the AFC East.
They are first in the AFC East, and they have completely turned their season around, which is incredible considering the fact that they have rookie quarterback Mac Jones. Again, it goes to the part of Bill Belichick, his ability to just build a team out of nowhere. He's by far the best coach the NFL has ever seen. There's been a lot of great coaches in the NFL, but I just don't think anybody who can match Mac. Patriots have no business leading AFC East right now in terms of winning the division. They just really don't have a place in that. I don't think they really had the talent to do so, but here they are winning it. You have J.C. Jackson, who's I think 3rd in interceptions, which is incredible. J.C. Jackson's a good corner, but Bill Belichick always puts him in the right position to make plays. Like defensively, offensively, players are just in the right position to make plays. It has a large portion due to Bill Belichick, and all hats off to him. Mac Jones is one of the cleanest. I think he's pretty much solidified offensive rookie of the year. He's having a very clean year. He's not doing anything spectacular where it's like 500 yards, et cetera, but it's not uncommon to see Mac Jones have a 200-yard game with 300 touchdowns, no interceptions, and have a pretty high completion rate. He's just very smart about things. And that's pretty much all I have to say about that. And again, Patriots working their way back, and they're 7-4, leading their division. Falcons dropped to 4-6. Max?
And one thing I hear a lot of people saying is like Mac Jones is one of the quarterbacks that fits Belichick's system because he's like a pure pocket passer. Let's stop with that. If Belichick had the 2nd or 3rd overall pick, he's not taking Mac Jones because he's nowhere near the more talented guy. He's gonna take Zach Wilson. He's gonna take Justin Fields. He's gonna take these guys that have a lot more potential. The fact that Mac Jones is doing as well as he's doing and all these other quarterbacks are not is just a testament to how far and away superior the Patriots coaching is compared to all these other teams that's making these quarterbacks or not. And that's Mac Jones should not be doing better than these other quarterbacks, but he is because he has the right coaching for it.
Gotcha. Totally agree. Moving on from there, Ravens, Bears. Ravens take this one 16-13. Typical of the Ravens to not take a game that they probably should win by a pretty large amount and hardly winning or losing. But obviously they take that win this week.
At least Lamar was out this time.
Yeah, so it makes a little bit more sense in terms of this game. Ravens moved to 7-3. Again, Bears 3-7. Huntley stepped in, 219 yards, 1 reception. Lamar Jackson pretty much was out. Forgot to cut. Didn't really mention this, but going right back to it, Lamar Jackson was out due to a random illness. I don't know if it was ever disclosed, but obviously it's not COVID. Out for this game. Kind of a freak thing. Devonta Freeman, 49 yards and a touchdown. Andrews, 73 yards receiving. I'm trying to think anybody special on defense. Not really. And then Bears, Andy Fields goes down with an injury, so Dalton steps in, and then 201 yards and two touchdowns for Dalton. So he had a pretty solid game in terms of what you would expect of Dalton at this point. Other than that, I really don't know what to say about this game. Bears are not really in playoff contention, and the Ravens are number one in their division. So as inconsistent as the Ravens have been, I feel like for the talent they've showed this year in terms of the games they've played really well, they should be able to take their division easily just because of how the rest of the teams have played out in the rest of the division. But again, they've been really inconsistent. So I think they're going to win their division and make the playoffs, but I don't know how far they're going to go because if they have one of their bad games against a really good team, it's going to be a complete blowout and boom, they're out of the playoffs. Max?
Yeah, I mean, of course, we could say Lamar was out for this game, but how does that excuse giving up a huge play right when Andy Dalton comes in, his very first play? How does that excuse giving up a clutch fourth down to the Bears? And I don't know what it was, but it was like a 50-yard conversion. They scored for a touchdown. I mean, it comes down to making the play at the right time. And I mean, maybe this is an overreaction, but it almost goes to show they're playing down to competition week in and week out. And sooner or later, overconfidence is going to come back to bite you, as I'm going to talk about with the Titans here in a little bit. I mean, when you let your guard down, that's what happens. And for the Bears, what would be their draft pick? Because you guys have their draft pick this year, their first rounder.
Yeah, I don't know because you're not going to go quarterback. Again, this upcoming draft is really edge heavy, so I imagine they go with an edge rusher just because of if you're picking the Bears, you go anybody who's I guess not a quarterback, not a running back. Yeah, anybody who's not a quarterback, not a running back, the best player on the board. That's where I would go.
I had a feeling that night when they traded you guys that first rounder, it was going to come back to bite them, and it really has. So they're 3-7.
100%. I'll move on from there. Packers, Vikings. Packers dropped this one. Vikings went 34-31. Packers moved to 8-3. Vikings moved to 5-5. There's the explaining this game. Divisional game. Vikings are a competitive team. This is one that was kind of a trap game where the Vikings go ahead and steal this one. I don't think it's anything crazy that they stole this one. In terms of performances, Aaron Rodgers, 385 yards and 4 touchdowns, 23 for 33 passing is pretty great. Typical of Aaron Rodgers, right? AJ Dillon steps in because Jones is injured, and I think AJ Dillon, in my opinion, is really proving himself to be that replacement for Jones. I really don't see the reason that. Again, I keep saying this over and over again. Because I own AJ Dillon on fantasy, so I really want him to start. But I'm a little biased there. But please get rid of Jones. At the end of the day, it's like he signs this contract, and you're kind of running a dual position. But AJ Dillon is just as productive, and there's no reason to have Jones in that big contract as a result. AJ Dillon, 11 carries, 53 yards, averaged 4.8 yards a carry. Didn't have any rushing touchdowns or receiving touchdowns in this game, but he also had 6 receptions for 44 yards. That's nearly a 100-yard game. In his first game as a sole running back, in a game where I don't think the offense was absolutely on par in terms of especially running the ball. AJ Dillon again, 4.8 yards a carry. I believe he leads the league in yards after contact. He's a good running back. There's no reason to not use him more and slowly fade out Jones and then trade him. I mean, that would be the route that I would go and save yourselves a decent amount of money. Moving on from there, Scantling steps in. I believe he was out for a couple of weeks with injury. 123 yards and a touchdown. Fantastic game for him. Devontae Adams getting 115 yards on 7 receptions for 2 touchdowns. typical Devontae Adams at this point. Preston Smith had 2 sacks. And then going over to the Vikings side of things in terms of performances, Kirk Cousins 341 yards and 3 touchdowns. You had Cook with a touchdown and 86 yards. Cook has really been relatively unproductive this year in terms of his pass. He's been decent, but I just haven't really been seeing him pop up in the highlights. Yeah, he's been injured a bit, so it's a kind of an off year for Cook. I don't expect him to really fade out from where he was a year ago, but kind of an off year for him. Even though 86 yards and touchdown is pretty good compared to his last year's performance, it doesn't really stay on par. Justin Jefferson, 169 yards and 2 touchdowns. Adam Thielen, 82 yards and a touchdown. Justin Jefferson's such a great wide receiver. I just love Justin Jefferson watching him. But it was the trade that they did to get rid of Stephon Diggs for Justin Jefferson. I think really played into their favor because Justin Jefferson is nearly as good as a wide receiver. Just with Stephon Diggs in the year that he's having, the Vikings have pretty much won that trade. And then Vikings on defense, looking through it, Smith had a sack. And that's pretty much all I can report. Max?
I mean, honestly, this game really didn't tell me anything I didn't know about either team. We know the Vikings are going to be inconsistent, but they're going to be competitive in these games, especially in a game where it's a rivalry game and both offenses are going to light the scoreboard. Don't worry too much about the Packers here. I mean, again, it's their arch rival, and games like these are going to be close from time to time. So, yeah, this is one of those games where I really was not surprised by the final result really at all.
100%. So moving on from there, this is the game that I'm most excited to talk about because I think it brings up one of the most interesting conversations that I think we could have this week. Colts Bills. Colts take this one 41-15. Colts are now 6-5. Bills are now 6-4. Colts are putting with this game. There's a lot of things that just changed in the NFL. There's a lot of factors that just happened in the NFL. Even though it was a blowout game, a lot of things happened. I'll get right into it. Start with the Colts side of things, right? Colts moved to 6-5. They are now very close to inching on to the Titans in terms of the division. They could still win the division. I still truly believe in my heart, once the Titans figure out the running game, that they will be able to win this division, and I think they will at some point. That being said, Colts definitely put themselves in position to win the wild card spot. They're definitely in that race. It's just been that type of year where there's no team that's absolutely dominating. Like, you don't have a 14-2 Chiefs or a 13-3 Bills compared to last year, where 6-5 is completely out of the playoff race. They definitely could be. So that's one big thing in this game, as well as they beat a really good Bills team who's been, we'll get back to the not as good as last year, but they still beat a pretty solid Bills team, 41-15, complete blowout. And I'm going to stop before I move on to the Bills here. I think it was pretty obvious to say why the Colts were doing so good in this game. Offensively, Jonathan Taylor, best running back in the league this year by far, not even close. 32 carries, had 185 yards. That's 5.8 yards a carry, as well as 4 touchdowns. And he also had 19, and then he had 19 yards receiving on 3 receptions with another touchdown. So my man had 5 touchdowns in this game. Had about over 200 yards from scrimmage. I believe Jonathan Taylor's almost at 1,200 yards, scrimmage yards on the air, and scrimmage yards, if you guys don't know, is their receiving yards plus their rushing yards. So he's about 1,200 yards on the year with about half the season left to go. The year that my friends are talking about it in a group chat, the year that Adrian Peterson won MVP, which is the last time a running back won MVP, was in 2012. And with that year, Adrian Peterson had a little bit over 2,000 yards from scrimmage, which was fantastic. Pretty similar to, I think, Saquon Barkley in 2018. Saquon Barkley obviously didn't win MVP that year. With that being said, with how subpar I think all the quarterback play has been this year, had Kyler Murray starting off really hot. He kind of faded out. Aaron Rodgers has had up and down games. Josh Allen, who's had up and down games. Tom Brady's been solid. Justin Herbert's been solid, but when you look at the statistics, Jonathan Taylor is just off the map in terms of his production as a running back this year. And my question to you is, and I'd say he's definitely in the running. And I think if he continues this, and even if he excels it, with how subpar the quarterback plays this year, I think Jonathan Taylor deserves MVP. He's just been that good. What are your opinions on that, Max? Jonathan Taylor for MVP?
Let me just tell you one thing. If Jonathan Taylor wins MVP this year and Derrick Henry does not even get consideration last year, I will be so pissed. I'll be so mad about it. I get context matters. This year, the quarterback play has not been as good. But how does Henry, who rushes for over 2,000 yards, not get a single ounce of consideration? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me.
I 100% agree with you. And then going further on that note, I was looking at the past. Everyone says, "Oh, an MVP is just a quarterback award at this point." While it is roughly true, I think running back obviously should be considered and need to be pushed more. Derrick Henry, I think should have definitely been in a better contention last year. That being said, I was looking at the past 20 years. It's been running back, quarterback nearly every year. My question is, where are the defensive players? I was looking at the statistics. Aaron Donald, 2018, 20 and a half sacks. And I don't think I ever considered him a candidate to really, really win MVP because, it's a quarterback award. We haven't had a defensive player win the MVP in like 20 years. So it's just the MVP award everyone knows is funny. It's just with how bad the quarterback play this year is that, obviously, Max is 100% right. Derrick Henry should have been considered, and he should have been possibly the winner last year. With how bad the quarterback plays this year, we may have a running back take the MVP spot again, as long as Jonathan Taylor continues to keep it up. I mean, just looking at the stuff that he's put up, it's just been absolutely incredible. In terms of fantasy, he's had a bad night for Jonathan Taylor in fantasy. He's like a 20-point game and a 1-point PPR in terms of type of fantasy league you're in. But again, just fantastic out of him. Moving on from there, nothing really receiving was crazy on the Colts. And then defensively was okay too, nothing crazy. As far as I remember, Pay had a sack, and then I believe Franklin had an interception, and Autumn had an interception. But moving on to the Bills side of things, Josh Allen has not looked overly fantastic this year. He's had some pretty good games, but really not that MVP level performance that we expected out of Josh Allen. There's a coming into this year, 209 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions for him. Nothing crazy. Mitch Trubisky had a couple plays here and there, but nothing crazy from him. Matt Breida was the leading rusher for 51 yards. And then receiving-wise, Knox was their number one receiver with 6 receptions and 80 yards. Davis had 27 yards receiving. Diggs was held to 23 yards, but also had 2 touchdowns. So I don't really know what you make of Diggs, really just a red zone threat there. But again, Diggs really hasn't been the same player that he was last year either. Emmanuel Sanders hasn't been overly productive. Cole Beasley hasn't been overly productive. Receiving wise, they haven't been great. Running back core, they have a decent running back core, but nothing that really stands out. I mean, between Breida, Singletary, and Moss, you have a group of subpar guys. None of them are, I would say, are bad running backs, but none of them really stick out and say, "Wow, this is something that's really going to make a difference." And then defensively, I know Poyer's been great this year, no doubt about it. But outside of Poyer, who's really sticking out on that defense to me? Greg Rousseau has been solid for a rookie. Micah Hyde's been so solid, but it's just not enough to really make a huge difference. They completely blow this game. The Bills are now 6-4, and they lost the lead in their division. And a division they really should have had in the bag this year. So, comes from this game, Colts move themselves into playoff position. Jonathan Taylor puts himself into MVP contention, I believe. And then the Bills are they going to make the playoffs? Are they going to win the division? The Bills start to lose their division. So, 3 major things that came out of this week, despite it being a blowout game, why it's very important. Max, any more comments on that?
Yeah, I think this goes really back to what I said earlier in the year. And I think this says way less about the Colts and more about the Bills, because especially on offense, how good really are they? Because like I said, they have Josh Allen and they have Stephon Diggs, and their secondary receiving is not good. Dawson Knox has been pretty good at tight end, but you're not going to rely on him like that as like a huge threat or anything. And I think you're being fairly generous to their run game. They have decent running backs, but overall the run game has been non-existent for them. And going back to the game against the Titans, which I really believe started to derail their momentum at the time. They lost that game mainly because the Titans came up with plenty of timely defensive stops. And even though they scored 31 points in the game, the Titans keeping them out of the end zone at critical times really preserved the win for them. And I mean, it goes to show no matter how good you are, have been, when you're one-dimensional, you're going to be figured out quickly. And I think this Bills team, I think they get figured out this offseason, because I think that, if nothing, they're going to have to realize that they have an issue. But this year, there's really no clear-cut contender, and I don't see anything that really separates them from the pack.
100%. So moving on from there, Browns, Lions, not much to say about the Lions. Obviously, they're 0-9-1 now. They lose 13-10 against the Browns. The Browns will do 6-5. Ultimately, a couple of things right here. Lions solidify themselves the number one overall pick here. Jared Goff didn't play in this game. They had Boyle, who I was looking at. I think I saw a video on Boyle, and it's like he was basically a backup throughout college. Somehow made his way into the NFL and is now a starting quarterback for the Lions, which is just incredible. Which I thought was really interesting. DeAndre Swift, the only positive highlight from this team this year, has been really fantastic. 136 yards and a touchdown. To move off the Lions now, that's all I've got to say about them. In terms of the Browns, great game out of Nick Chubb, 22 carries for 130 yards. I expect that Kareem Hunt should come back after this week, hopefully, especially for my fantasy team, hopefully. My question lies with Baker Mayfield. Not a great game out of him. You know, this is one of those games that it's like, yeah, Baker really did not perform up to par, and he's a large part of the reason that they did not really compete in this game as well as they should have against a very bad Lions team. Baker Mayfield, 176 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. You know, Baker Mayfield's throws, his reads, not really up to par, I think, where they should be at this point in the NFL. And it's just, the way that Baker Mayfield plays, I have to put it to this. Either A, he's not the long-term answer for the Browns, which I think is very possible in terms of them wanting to reach that Super Bowl. Or B, that shoulder injury that he had early in the year is still nagging him. And it's playing a huge part into his game this year. And, you know, I think the truth always lies somewhere in the middle. He probably hasn't had the development to hit where he needs. It may be possible, but and that shoulder injury is really bothering me.
Did he hurt his foot or something as well?
I believe so as well. Yeah. So again, injuries have been really nagging him this year.
A lower body injury.
And then defensively for the Browns, Myles Garrett goes this game without a sack, which I think is important because Myles Garrett does lead the league in sacks this year with 13 sacks.
That shocks me. I didn't know that.
Well, which again, Myles Garrett against the Lions offensive line, you expect him to grab a sack here and there. So I think he's still the sack leader at this point with 13 sacks on the year. So, Max, any comments?
I just really want to touch on Baker Mayfield because, and I will say I was so high on the Browns going into the year, including Baker. I really thought they were going to come back, have a great year. Obviously, he hasn't gone their way. There's a multitude of factors. Obviously, the injuries bugging him, and I really do believe the Browns should probably shut him down because a labrum injury like that is really nothing to play through. I believe it takes like 4 months or something to recover from that. So, yeah, I mean, he obviously wants to play, but I think at a certain point, you have to put your health first. Also, and I'm seeing on the field when he throws these inaccurate passes, you can see the way he talks to his teammates, like, what are you doing where you're supposed to be? And when he responded to the fans booing him, he pretty much said, well, these are the same fans that aren't quite more on offense. Like, I just feel like we're slowly going back to the Baker who creates drama for no reason. I mean, when they're winning, they're doing fine. But when you're losing, you still have to keep your cool. And some part of being a leader is being a quiet leader at times. And I guess, especially with maybe not as much on the field because we don't know who's at fault for all these incompletions that receivers could be running the wrong routes. We don't necessarily know there. In the media, though, you got to be quiet in that scenario. Just say it's whatever. You got to move on and win, and don't blame the fans for anything like that because ultimately you're the one who is throwing the football. You have to make the plays, and even if the fans are loud, you got to be stronger than that. I mean, of course, the fans being loud is not what's causing Baker to be bad. It's everything else that's on and off the field. But it just sucks to see the Browns. I mean, yes, they have a bunch of injuries, but we don't want them to be the same drama-laden team that cost them so heavily in previous years.
100%. So moving on from there, Washington Panthers. Washington takes this one 27-21. Washington moves to 4-6. Panthers move to 5-6. Not much to say about this game other than Heineke steps in again. He pretty much has solidified himself as quarterback for this team for the rest of the year. So 206 yards, 3 touchdowns at him. Pretty solid game. Gibson with 95 yards, and then McLaurin with 103 yards and 1 touchdown. Again, pretty typical game of Washington right here. Obviously, they had to go without Chase Young this week, as he's now after the year with an ACL injury, but they're still performing to win the game here. On the Panthers side of things, this is probably the most interesting storyline of the game so far. Cam Newton, as they signed him last week, has now become the starter of the Panthers. And, you know, with Sam Darnold's subpar performance this year and his injury, could see Cam Newton be the starter for the rest of the year. I think it's possible. Not really 100% sure on it. But Cam Newton does bring a spark to this team that they haven't had, I think, all year. Obviously, Cam Newton doesn't really know the playbook too well right now, so that's his biggest challenge. Just like, you sign with the team, you're the starting quarterback within the week. I'm sure Cam Newton is spending every single waking hour of his day trying to learn what he can about that playbook so he doesn't look like an idiot on Sunday. I mean, that's what you got to do, because think about it, how much work goes into making reads as a quarterback. So, and they use his legs a little bit, 46 yards and a touchdown with his legs. But again, he still had 189 yards passing with 2 touchdowns with no interceptions, which on 20 for 21 for 27 passing. That's pretty incredible. Again, for the fact that he stepped in a little over a week ago to be the team's quarterback, and he's now the starter. Playing that clean of a game, all hands off to him. Christian McCaffrey, 59 yards. And just going off of that, Cam Newton should have had a job way earlier in the NFL. I have no reason why he didn't get signed. As subpar as he was with the Patriots, the fact that no one really saw him as good enough as a backup up until this point, I guess you're playing with a little bit of the drama that Cam Newton brings, but I think he's worth it in terms of a backup quarterback at least. With the talent that he brings, he's a guy that when he's playing good, he's pretty damn great, and he's worth having on the team as backup quarterback without a doubt. So I really don't know why a team never really even signed him as backup quarterback up until this point. But steal for the Panthers, especially they needed him when they got him. Comes home, is performing well. Christian McCaffrey, 59 yards on the ground with 10 carries, and then he also had 7 receptions for 60 yards and a touchdown. DJ Moore with 50 yards and a touchdown. And other than that, I don't think there's anything crazy this week in terms of the Panthers defense. So that pretty much covers the game. Again, Panthers drop it 5-6, 21-27 win for Washington. Pretty much a relevant game in terms of playoffs or anything like that, because neither team is really in position to make a playoff run or even make the playoffs. So, Max?
I think the answer to whether or not you're starting Cam Newton at this point is a resounding yes. And you look at the difference it's made, even with McCaffrey in the game 3 weeks ago, I believe it was against the Patriots. And I mistakenly thought on the podcast that McCaffrey wasn't playing, but he was. Darnold was in, and their offense was still terrible. And to me, that just reeks of no confidence in Sam Darnold when things are going badly. And as a quarterback, you need to be able to be strong when momentum isn't in your favor. But Cam comes in and supposedly not knowing the play very well. First game starting in since last year, and he those 2 touchdowns and rushes for 1. I mean, it's impressive stuff for a guy that just came in. And I really thought Cam was washed once he got up in the Patriots. Was that more of a testament to how good Mac Jones is, as best and not necessarily how bad Cam was, because he's proving right now like you said, he's at least backup caliber. And I also want to touch on McCaffrey. You said it was 10 carries, 59 yards. That's perfect now. That's absolutely fine. He's still getting 5.9 yards a carry. I mean, that's what you want. I mean, it seems like it's too early, but right now this offense is starting to find themselves more. And with Cam, and he's got the momentum right now. I mean, granted, they lost this game, but I mean, they're moving the football, and it doesn't look like Cam is 33 years old or whatever he is. He looks like he can still run, and he still made 2 good throws on the touchdowns. I mean, unless he starts to really do bad, I'm keeping him in. I'm not even considering bringing Darnold back in.
100% is going off the Christian McCaffrey point is that for a player that normally gets like 30 carries a game, narrowing him down to 10 is going to increase his longevity, allows Cam Newton to run the ball a little bit. And he's still getting 7 receptions. So at 17 touches, obviously you got incompletions and stuff like that. So he's probably getting 20 to 25 touches a game. That's probably a good place for Christian McCaffrey to be in terms of he's going to have good production, and you're not going to have him at a huge injury risk. So that's going to be pretty big. Moving on from there, not going to say much about this game. I'm going to let Max do his thing because I think it's best off served that way. Next game that we have is the Texans and the Titans. Texans win this one 22-13.
Do we have to talk about this?
So the Titans dropped this one. They moved 8-3. Texans moved to 2-8. I don't have much to say about this game. I'm going to let Max do his thing. So go ahead, Max.
So I think this stat's probably been shoved in everyone's face the past few days. So you've been keeping up with the Titans. They won 8 in a row after losing to the Jets, which is important in this story. They went on a 6-game winning streak. In that winning streak, in order, they beat the Bills, Chiefs, Colts, Rams, Saints, all playoff teams from 2020. Yet you're 0-2 against the Texans and Jets. I don't want to hear about injuries. I don't want to hear about ineffectiveness. I don't want to hear about the weather conditions, none of that. A streak like that just reeks of overconfidence when you know you're playing not a great team. But when the Titans know they're playing a great team, Mike Vrabel seems to have prepared. Like, I just don't get how this is possible. Like, and people will say, oh, it's an easy fix, blah, blah. Trust me, I've been following this team for a while, and I know this is what happens. Last year, even still, when we were starting out 5-0, there were several games that we had to come back and win by a point or two. Like, you just can't keep doing this all the time. And in this case, Tannehill throws 4 interceptions, easily his worst game in the two-tone blue. I mean, granted, he had nothing, but still, like I keep saying, the injuries don't matter at this point because it comes down to preparation and winning games. And people are going to be like, oh, they'll take care they'll take care of it for the playoffs because they won't overlook anyone then. Let me tell you right now, that's not going to be true because and again, big if with our injuries this year, if Derrick Henry comes back, which he's slated to do, if Julio can get rested off of IR, which there's a good chance he could because it's been pretty evident he's been playing injured the whole year. If AJ remains healthy, but Dupree comes back, and the Titans go into the playoff as the 1 seed, which there still is a chance it's going to happen because the schedule's still fairly easy and the Pats and Bills have to play each other twice. If the Titans go into the playoffs as the 1 seed and everyone's healthy, you better believe they're going to be favorites to reach the Super Bowl. And say they go in and they play the 7th seed, the 7th seed gets the upset in the first week. You think the Titans you're not going to overlook them? They 100% are. And that really, really scares me because 2 years ago, remember, we went into Baltimore as the 6th seed and they were the 1 seed. Should have had no chance to win that game and go out and dominate them. And all I can fear is the same thing happening to us.
100%. I could not have said it better. I guess, yeah, the Titans are really good. They're going to figure out that running game. Adrian Peterson wasn't the answer.
No.
There's got to be something they can do. And whether it's adjustments they got to make. It's going to take a little bit of Mike Vrabel in terms of and that and the entire offensive staff to be able to be creative enough to work around not having Derrick Henry. And if you can just win enough games, again, with your schedule being easy enough, Derrick Henry will return. I have no doubt about it. This season, he's one tough cookie. Even if he shouldn't return this year, he's going to return this year because he's Derrick Henry.
I could see him returning just like maybe in weeks 15, 16, 17, just get a few carries. That's why he doesn't go into the playoffs completely like raw because you probably want to get a little bit of a few touches before just to get him going. That's the one thing I fear. Not the one thing. There's a lot of things I fear with this team, but bring Henry back if you want in short spurts in case he just wants to get more extra conditioning. Just don't rush his health, please. Like you don't want to risk that, and I fear that's what's going to happen. I fear we're still living in this mindset where we're relying on Derrick Henry to win us games, and he's not playing, and it's shown the offense has completely lost its identity. Again, no one's healthy, but still, when you're going out there, and I mean, to be fair, the offense has been bad the whole time without Henry, but when you're going out there and giving teams like the Rams and Saints run for their money, but then floundering, making all these mistakes against the Texans, I mean, all of it just shows that like there's way too heavy reliance on talent to win these games, and I just don't know about it come playoff time.
100%. So moving on from there, 49ers, Jaguars. 49ers win 30-10. Not much about that game. Jaguars are not good. 49ers are decent. I don't know where 49ers are going to end up in terms of quarterback positioning, but still not in love with Garoppolo, but that's pretty much all I got to say about that game. Dolphins beat the Jets. I could talk about this game. Dolphins are 4-7. Jets are 2-8.
What was the final score? I forgot.
So Dolphins win 24-17. Tua 273 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. He's subpar. Again, I don't know where Tua falls. Is he the answer quarterback? I don't know. Week after week, I see some sort of. Oh, by the way, just got a notification on my phone right now. Kareem Hunt and as well as Jack Conklin were just designated to return for the Browns this week. So there you go in terms of players getting off injury.
Especially that run game.
100%. So moving from there, Gaskin, 89 yards rushing. He had a pretty solid game for Gaskin, but receiving wise, Jalen Waddle, 65 yards. Hollins with 72 yards on a touchdown. His Jets team's just not great. You had Joe Flacco as your quarterback this week, 2 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, 291 yards. Decent game manager, nothing spectacular. I think Carter has kind of came out as the leading runner for the Jets at this point. So he had 63 yards rather on the ground. One player that I do want to talk about for the Jets, and I think is the only notable thing from this game. Elijah Moore has pretty much came onto the scene. I believe it was a second round pick at wide receiver. I forget where he was drafted. And he's past 3 games, he's been absolutely fantastic. I mean, playing at an elite level, and he's had different quarterbacks while playing at that elite level. So I can only give the credit to Elijah Moore, being able to be a playmaker and being in the right spots. 141 yards and a touchdown. So, what it's looking like right now is the Jets may have found a number 1 receiver, which is going to be huge because Corey Davis really hasn't performed overly well since he's left the Titans, which is, I guess, good for Max. Berrios has been all right. Jameson Crowder had 44 yards and a touchdown. He was all right. But Elijah Moore has really stepped up as the number 1 receiver for this Jets team. And you got to remember, I still don't think they're playing Mims at all either, which I think I believe is Mims injured. I forget. I believe he is, right? On the top of my head.
I really don't know.
Because I haven't seen him in stat line in a while. I remember the last time I think he was injured. So they eventually get Mims involved, and you have Elijah Moore playing well. You could have spoiled somewhat of a good receiving core right there. Continue to work in the offensive line, maybe get a really good piece at running back. This Jets team could piece it together, but right now, 2-8, it does not look great. Max?
We also don't forget Michael Carter, the running back for the Jets. He went 9 for 63 this games, and if you talk to Jets fans, I haven't watched a ton, but if you talking, there are not a lot of bright spots on this team, but they genuinely believe, Michael Carter is going to be great. And if you look at the way he plays, he definitely has that potential. I mean,
I agree.
Again, it's the Jets, but with Elijah Moore and Michael Carter, they have 2 foundational pieces to build around.
That's one thing, the good thing they've gotten out of this year.
He went 9 for 63 this game, 7 yards a carry. I mean, that's really good.
And you look at the past, they've had players like I don't even know CJ Mosley, where it's like, yeah, he's a veteran. The ceiling, looking at players with really high ceilings, you got 2 right there, which is a positive out of this season. Moving on from there, Saints Eagles. Eagles takes 40 to 29. Eagles move to 5-6, and the Saints move to 5-5. I don't know if either teams are really in playoff contention at this point. We'll have to see how the season ends up. But notably, Trevor Siemian, 214 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Obviously, Siemian is just a placeholder at this point until they get a quarterback that they really like. With that being said, they went and had signed, I believe, Taysom Hill to a $40 million contract extension over this past week, if I remember correctly.
It's really good. I believe it's from anywhere. I don't know the numbers. I believe it was somewhere from 40 to 90 million total, depending on the position he plays. So
it's very interesting.
Really weird. Earlier in the offseason, or the day right before free agency, he signed a contract. It was $140 million, but it was made to that where he wasn't going to make a dime from it, and it was just going to clear cap space. So I don't know really what.
Yeah,
hopefully Taysom Hill gets some money because he's a decent player.
So where he ends up, I don't know. Mark Ingram, 88 yards carrying, and then receiving wise, Smith was their leading receiver, 64 yards. Again, nothing spectacular out of the Saints team. Davenport had a sack and a half. He had a sack from Cameron Jordan. Other than that, again, Saints team has been very lackluster this year. Really haven't found an answer at quarterback, as well as Alvin Kamara being out for this game was big. So moving on from there, the Eagles, I want to talk about this. Jalen Hurts, 147 yards passing, but also had 69 yards running and then 3 touchdowns on the ground. Jalen Hurts, believe it or not, which is kind of hard to believe, is the number 1 quarterback in football right now in terms of statistics between his production. Especially if you look at fantasy leagues, he has good margin there in terms of his lead as number 1 quarterback, I believe.
And he's been consistent the whole year.
Very consistent. Not overly spectacular passing the ball, but his ability to run the ball is, I believe, is really not talked about enough because he's been so consistent this year in terms of his ability to run the ball. It's really added dynamics to the Eagles offense. They've been one of the most productive offenses in the NFL. If only they could say the same about their defense. I know Darius Slay got an easy pick six in this game. But other than that, again, offensively, nothing spectacular. Miles Sanders eventually steps back into this game after being out for so long. 94 yards on the ground for him, which is solid. Goddard 62 yards and Devonta Smith 61 yards. Again, defensively, I know for a fact that I believe Shea got a pick six in this game, which was a comeback route that was poorly thrown by Simeon, which was a very easy pick six. But other than that, again, Eagles defense has been very lackluster. Their offense has been really productive. I don't know where they really fall in terms of how talented of an offense they are, because they pile on points in games that they're winning, but they've lost a couple of games too where they really haven't performed well. So I guess inconsistency could be the word, but Jalen Hurts is not part of that inconsistency. He's been very consistent this year. And I don't think he's talked about enough. He's definitely solidified himself as a starting quarterback for this team, as well as for next years to come. He may be the final answer for the Eagles. And we'll have to see as he continues to play. I think it's going to be important for him as his career continues to advance, that he's going to continue to progressively add on to his passing game. But his running game is without a doubt not talked about enough. And I think Jalen Hurts is probably the long-term answer at quarterback for the Eagles. Max?
Yeah, I was going to say, I've been going the whole year saying, I think Jalen Hurts he get another year. I'm at the point now where he has to get another year, unless it's like a situation where they can trade for someone that they know is better, can help them long-term. Right now, they don't have a better option. Jalen Hurts is improving day by day by day. Yeah, he's not the greatest passer, but with the guy who works that hard and guy who's shown as much improvement, you can expect him to do that. I mean, right now the Eagles are, I believe, have they won 3 in a row? Yeah, they've gotten a bunch of wins in a row now. They have momentum, and right now, with how weak the NFC is, they very well could make the playoffs. I believe they're at 5-6, which, believe it or not, this year is definitely in contention for a playoff spot. And Jalen Hurts is a huge part of that. And I mean, yeah, I know that the Eagles have been a mess recently, but they should be excited what they have in Jalen Hurts, because they've got a guy who's progressing by the day. And who would have thought that Jalen Hurts would have turned out better than Tua in the NFL, and Jalen's on the Eagles, who are not that well run.
Yeah. With that being said, Bengals Raiders. Bengals win this one 32-13. I'll say this about this game: nothing really that I want to talk about. Other than the Raiders have dropped 3 in a row, and that 3 in a row comes right after the Henry Ruggs situation. And I personally don't think it's a coincidence. I believe that, again, I was saying this for a while now, that this Raiders team winning as much as they have with the situation that they have simply makes no sense. You lose your head coach due to controversy. Henry Ruggs is out in terms of, he made a horrible decision and cost somebody their life, so he's gone. There's a lot of off-field drama for this team, and it's coming back to bite them. They don't have the structure. Derek Carr is just not enough in terms of structure for this team to stay on the rails, and they dropped 3 in a row, and I believe they're really quickly running out of contention for this division. I believe they're 5-6 now, if I remember correctly. They're 5-5. But again, you drop 3 in a row, you're not looking great. Max?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. Everything off the field is starting to come together for the Raiders, and it's catching up to them. And Derek Carr, I really think he needs to demand. I really love what I see from him week in, week out. I think he's really what's been keeping them in these games recently, or not recently, but early in the year, because he led several game-winning drives or game-tying drives, something. He made critical play to keep his team in games, if not win them. And I mean, eventually, you can't rely on one player, no matter how good they are, to carry you to relevancy. I mean, this Raiders team is a mess, but Derek Carr seems like he's done what he can to keep him in these games, but it's not working anymore.
I got a question. Do you think if Derek Carr was traded to the Titans, would you prefer Derek Carr over Ryan Tannehill?
Yes.
There you go. Because Ryan Tannehill, that's another thing we didn't talk about Titans. Ryan Tannehill has not been great this year either. I believe he really wasn't performing until he did last year. So,
and people would say it's without Henry. Even with Henry in the game, he was not doing very well. I mean, he was doing okay, but he was throwing a lot more interceptions. We've talked about the Titans enough. So
so moving on from there, Cowboys Chiefs. Chiefs win this one 19-9. In a game I think they really had no business winning coming into it, but again, Chiefs are turning their season around as quickly as the Bills are losing a little bit of their season. The Chiefs are turning their season around. They've had not overly convincing wins that I would say. I'm like, wow. But again, the Chiefs have won. I'm looking at it. They've won 1, 2, 3. They won 4 in a row now. So, They're really turning the season around. In a season I thought they were lost, they're putting up a fight. In terms of the Cowboys, 0 for 2, 0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions for Dak Prescott, 216 yards. Pollard was the leading rusher for the Eagles this time. Less carries, but a lot more yards. 7 carries for 50 yards. Not great production out of Ezekiel Elliott. Receiving wise, I know CeeDee Lamb had sort of an injury, and he's expected to play this Thursday, so wasn't too bad of an injury, but definitely did not allow him to be overly productive in this game. Amari Cooper wasn't in this game. Schultz was the leading receiver, 53 yards. Defensively, I know that Curse had an interception, and then Armstrong had a sack. But in terms of the Chiefs, right, I think offensively they weren't spectacular this game. They put up 19 points, right? And it's going to be crazy to say. But their defense is what allowed them to win this game. Their defenses have really stepped up in these past 4 games that have really allowed them to win. I think out of the past 4 games, Chiefs offense maybe had 2 out of 4 good games. I think that Chiefs defense has had 3 out of 4 good games. You know what I mean? So it's just, they're the reason they're really competing now, which is incredible to say. Patrick Mahomes, 260 yards, 0 touchdowns, 1 interception. Is another game out of Patrick Mahomes. It's like, where is Patrick Mahomes that we knew? And I've been saying it all year. It just really hasn't been as productive as he was in years past. Clyde Edwards-Helaire steps back into the game after being injured for so long. 63 yards and 1 touchdown. Tyreek Hill had 33 yards rushing. Tyreek Hill also had 77 yards receiving, and then Kelsey had 74 yards receiving. But again, I want to talk about this defense. Ward had an interception. Snead had an interception. 3.5 sacks for Chris Jones, which was an incredible game out of him. The lead sack, the sack leader for this week. Again, it just really goes to show. Now, I saw an article. Also, Frank Clark had a sack. It just really goes to show me, I think, over these past 4 games, and that I forget. I saw a news post that said it, that as long as you have the right coach, and I think the Patriots are a great definition of this. As long as you have the right coach, that coach will make the right adjustments to be able to win with any personnel that you have in the NFL. Because there's a ton of athletes in the NFL, and there's a ton of stars too, but there's a ton of athletes in the NFL. With the right coaching, you can make it work. And it just goes to show that, pieces like Chris Jones, now that they've made some changes, are really being productive in the past 4 games. And it's great to see in terms of where the Chiefs defense is heading. Max?
I mean, in terms of this game, in the past 2 games, the Chiefs have seemed to kind of find themselves more. They're still leading the AFC West. I believe, are they 11-4 at this point? No, excuse me, 7-4. My bad. Looks like they're 7-4 at this point in the season. But as far as this game goes, I mean, I wouldn't say all the problems with the Chiefs. I mean, this is a big statement, would be anyway. But you can't say all the problems that plagued the Chiefs are gone, because even though their offense was productive early, they kind of stalled out late. Their defense, surprisingly, is what really won them this game. So, I mean, I think that there are still a lot of questions. Even the game against the Raiders, we talk about the Raiders, how much of a mess they are. I think them winning 41-14 in that game said more about the Raiders. So I still want to see more consistency out of the Chiefs, especially on offense, which is their bread and butter. So, I mean, it's looked a little better the past 2 weeks. I mean, they've won 2 in a row, or how many they've won. I just remember mainly these past 2 games, but they won 3 because they beat the Pack. 4, how many they won in the row? This really past 2 games when they really looked better. So, I mean, good for them, but we got to see more until we really say that they're contenders like we've known them to be.
100%. So moving on from there, Cardinals Seahawks. Don't have much to say about this game. Cardinals win at 20-13. Other than the Seahawks have been pretty abysmal this year. Just not the same team. And I know Max definitely talked a little bit about it before the podcast. But Max, do you want to say anything about the Seahawks? Because again, 23-13. Cardinals are still the number 1 team in the NFL. They're 9-2, and then the Seahawks are 3-7 now, which is just big fall from grace for the Seahawks. Max?
I just don't really. It just seems like I said earlier in the episode. I don't know if I said this. I remember Nick Knightley were talking about it. They've just been such a dumpster fire since the Jamal Adams trade. Everything just seems to not go their way. Even Russell Wilson is back in the game. Their offense is still lackluster even with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. It just seems like I don't want to blame Russell Wilson. It's because I know how great he is, and I know how great he can be, and maybe some of it does fall on him. But he was injured for however long he was, and with how bad their offense is doing, with all the weapons they have, it seems just to be more underlying issues than we realize. And I really do think Russell Wilson should demand a trade out of there because there's nothing left that franchise. They don't have their first round pick next year. It looks like it's going to be a high pick. And there's no way Russell Wilson can win with that team. I think for both parties, it's probably best for them to just part ways.
Yeah, there's a ton of rebuilding that they have to do. Yeah, DK Metcalf's a great piece, but outside of that, Chris Carson is looking iffy. I don't know where the offensive line falls. That defense is subpar. Jamal Adams really hasn't performed, so it's just a lot of big question marks that you really question where the Seahawks going. So I definitely agree with you. It may be time for Russell Wilson to depart from the Seahawks. It just may be that point in his career where, if he wants any chance of winning the Super Bowl, it's not going to be with the Seahawks franchise until they rebuild. He doesn't have enough time in his career to wait around for them to do that. Moving on from there, Steelers Chargers. Chargers take this one 41-37. They don't make the cover, which is everyone. I think everyone's saying this week. Ben Roethlisberger 273 yards, 3 touchdowns. Najee Harris was held to 39 yards rushing and a touchdown. Deontay Johnson, again, who's been one of those sneaky wide receivers, has been very good this year. 101 yards and a touchdown here. And then beyond that, on the Chargers side of things, Justin Herbert, 382 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 reception. Justin Herbert's one of those quarterbacks that have kind of held on to MVP contention and throughout this entire season, as well as, with all the ups and downs that the Chargers have had. Justin Herbert also was their leading rusher with 90 yards on the ground. So again, MVP contention right there, nearly 500 yards. He had contributed to this game. Austin Eckler, 50 yards and 2 touchdowns. And other than that, I don't know. In terms of Keenan Allen had 112 yards, which he was solid. Mike Williams finally steps up a little bit here, 97 yards and a touchdown. Eckler also had 2 touchdowns receiving. Austin Eckler, very productive this week. Justin Herbert was very good. Mike Williams was very good. This Chiefs offense was very good. Defensively, Chargers rather, and then the Chargers defense was obviously not great this game. So other than that, I don't know what else to say. Max?
This game honestly seemed like another typical Chargers Chris game where they're up by, I believe, 17 going into the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
And what's the final? Did they allow 27 points? And what was the final? Was the final score 41-37?
It was 41-37. They allowed 27 points in the fourth quarter.
The Chargers allowed 27 points in the fourth quarter. It seemed like they were choking it away, but then Justin Herbert leads them on a game-winning drive, and pretty much anything in the MVP conversation I discuss, I know is going to be biased because I don't want Jonathan Taylor winning it. But you got to consider Justin Herbert for this award. Just look at the way he plays. He's so good throwing the football. He can run as well. He's a threat that way. And watching him lead the game-winning drive when typical Chargers teams would just flounder and choke. I mean, this guy is really, really something special with how subpar most of the quarterback play has been this year. If he can catch fire these next few weeks, and depending on how the playoffs go, he could win MVP. And I will say, the MVP is a regular season award, but with how unclear it is this year, you better believe the playoffs are going to play a factor in it. Mm-hmm. They always have, whether people want to admit it. And this year, they're going to again.
100%. So, moving on from there, last game of the week, Buccaneers, Giants. Don't have much to say about this game. Buccaneers take this one 30-10. Pretty obvious game. In terms of records, Buccaneers moved to 7-3, Giants moved to 3-7, which even at 3-7, I was reading an article and it says that this is the Giants' best start out of the past 5 years. Since that playoff run. The 3-6, 3-7 is their best start, which is just it's so depressing as a Giants fan. We're just not good, man.
Tell the team. That's all I gotta say.
It's got to start from the top down, and hopefully the firing Jason Garrett is a start to that, but we'll see where that goes. So without further ado, that week wraps up week 11, and it brings our lightning round of picks. So Max, are you ready to go for our lightning round of picks? Thanksgiving edition. So here we go. Lightning round of picks. Week 12, here we go. Bears, Lions. I'm taking the Bears, no doubt about it.
I feel like I've done this the past weeks and it hasn't worked out. I'm going to go with the Lions first.
You're guessing on the Lions win.
The Lions have to come through for me at some point, and I don't know why I keep picking them, but I really think they're reeling. And if all the rumors about Matt Nagy are true, then it's too much drama. I think the Lions are going to find a way.
I still believe in the Bears. It's not a testament how good the Bears are. It's how bad the Lions are.
I'm probably done picking them the rest of the year.
Yeah. Raiders, Cowboys. I'm taking the Cowboys. Cowboys are going to bounce back from that Chiefs game, as well as the Raiders are still falling from grace. Max?
I will take the Cowboys. Unfortunately, one of my favorite Thanksgiving pastimes is watching the Cowboys get absolutely embarrassed on their home field. I'm really, really hoping for it this game.
Mhm.
Just don't see it happening with how much of the mess the Raiders have been.
I'm Bills Saints. I'm taking the Bills. I think the Bills are going to take advantage of that subpar Saints defense as well as that that subpar Saints offense. Some of their players are going to thrive. A couple interceptions here and there. I think the Bills are going to take this one by a small margin, but it's going to allow them to move back to 7-4. It's going to be huge for them, Max.
Yeah, I think the Saints are definitely going to cover. They've been inconsistent. The Bills are kind of reeling a little bit. I still think the Bills are going to win that. I do think talent wins the end of the day.
Steelers Bengals is probably going to be a pretty good one. Moving to our Sunday games now. I'm gonna go with the Bengals here. I think they're gonna just it's gonna be a very close game, no doubt about it. I think the Bengals are just gonna beat the Steelers, Max.
I think the Steelers are going to edge them out. I think the Steelers show that they definitely can still hang around with competitive teams. And part of the reason I'm picking the Steelers is when's the last time the Bengals swept the Steelers in a regular season series?
Sure.
I don't think that's happened since I've started watching football, which was 2010.
But you also remember Ben Roethlisberger's been a decent quarterback throughout the time. This might be the year.
It's the streak has done at some point. I still think the Bengals are still a fairly flawed team, even though they've improved. They still have improvements to make. I still think the Steelers are going to win this game because it's just one of those things. I think history repeats itself.
100%. So moving on from there, Panthers Dolphins. I'm taking the Panthers this one. I think the Panthers are going to get their first win with Cam Newton behind the helmet quarterback, and it's going to be a relatively close win. I don't expect this to be anywhere near a blowout or this is probably going to be one possession game, I'd imagine. But Panthers are going to edge out the Dolphins. Max?
I completely agree with you. And don't look now, Dolphins have won 3 in a row, I believe. But I think the Panthers, even though they've lost both games, I still think the return of Cam is really helping their momentum. I think it's kind of somewhat turned around their season, at least their offense. I think they're going to win by a small margin, but nonetheless, they're going to get the W on the road.
100%. Eagles, Giants. I can say this. I have no doubt about this outcome. Without a doubt, the Eagles are going to absolutely destroy the Giants, and that's coming from a Giants fan.
Eagles, 100%. I think the spread's like 3.5 right now. I definitely think they're going to cover that. Eagles momentum. Giants are just a mess.
And you're going to have Jason Garrett step up to be as rather he got fired. So you're going to have Freddie Kitchens. You guys remember the former head coach.
We've never even talked about that.
Yeah, so you're going to have Freddie. I forgot how to say that, but I'll talk about it after next week after he does a horrible job. But Freddie Kitchens, former head coach of the Browns, tight end coach for the Giants. He's now stepping up to be the offensive coordinator. So we'll see how he does as the offensive coordinator. I don't think it's going to be great. Titans, Patriots. This is going to be a very good game. It's at Foxborough. This is a good one. I'm going to take. I'm going to have. I don't know. I don't even know what
you got to go. You got to. I can't go first here. You got to go.
I'm going to go with the Patriots because it's in Foxborough, and it's going to be this should be a fantastic game. Max,
I'm going to do what I never do. I'm going with the Titans. I think I'm going to trust Vrabel this one time. I'm going to trust Vrabel. It's going to be a typical Titans game.
Wow, if they again, there's going to be a huge testament to them. If they can be creative enough and win on the road in Foxborough against the really hot Patriots team right now, it's going to say everything you need to hear about the Titans. I think if they win this game, to me, that solidifies in my head. I'm like, they're winning the Super Bowl. They're my favorite team right now. To win the Super Bowl.
This Titans team is the definition of an enigma, and I think this Sunday's going to prove it.
100%. Falcons, Jaguars. That's toilet bowl right there. I'm going with the Falcons here by a decent margin, just because that's how bad the Jaguars are.
Yeah, both teams are bad. Jags even worse.
Buccaneers, Colts. I'm going with the Bucs here. I don't think the Colts are going to win another one. With that being said, I think John Taylor probably still have a good game, but Colts, Buccaneers without a doubt for me.
Colts better not win this game. I don't see them winning 2 like this in a row. I think the Bucs are going to win. I think they're looking to get back on track after losing 2 in a row, and they just did against the Giants. So back on track.
Bigger toilet bowl, Jets, Texans. Don't really know who's going to win this one. It could be either team. I'm going to go with the Texans just because they came off a hot win off Titans. Have a little bit of confidence. Probably worked out a little bit of their kinks. You don't 100% beat the Titans by accident. You know what I mean? Bad game by the Titans, but I'm going to go Texans here by a small margin. Max?
Well, I'm going with the Jets because the Texans won. I don't see the Texans winning 2 in a row.
Chargers, Broncos. I'm taking the Chargers without a doubt.
And I think honestly, this is the case of the Chargers cover. I really think the Chargers are much better, and especially just on offense. Denver's not going to be able to keep pace.
Vikings 49ers. Again, I don't expect the Vikings to really go back to back. 49. I'm going to take the 49ers here. No doubt about it. Rams Packers is going to be another fantastic game right there. Flip of a coin for who wins this one. 7-3 versus 8-3. I don't know.
I think the Rams are going to come off their bye week. They've lost 2 in a row. I think they come out motivated. I think it was hard for me to pick this one too. I think the Rams are going to edge them out.
I'm going to go with the Packers here because A, the Packers are at home. B, I don't like that Odell went to the Rams because just to me it made no sense. I'm going to go with the Packers.
Games like these, we can't be the same.
Yeah, so I got to go Packers here. Browns Ravens. I'm going with the Ravens without a doubt. I think in this one.
Don't underestimate the Ravens playing down the competition like we talked about. But I think at home, I think they're going to find a way to pull it out at the end.
And then final game of the week. It's upcoming Monday, the 29th. Seahawks Washington. I'm gonna pick Washington in this one. Washington's home.
Toilet bowl.
And Seahawks are just not performing well. So I'm gonna go Washington. Max going Washington. And that wraps up our lightning round of picks for week 12. Hope you guys enjoyed the episode. It's been a great couple of weeks of football. And, again, it's been a really interesting year of football because teams are there's not really this powerhouse team that's like they're unbeatable this year. So it's going to be close all the way down to the wire. It's going to be a fantastic rest of the year of football. I'm excited to see week 12. With that being said, I hope you guys have a happy Thanksgiving and some happy holidays coming up. Go eat your turkeys and spend time with your family 100%. With that being said,
definitely don't forget to be in front of the TV watching games all day. I know I'll be doing that tomorrow. Thanksgiving is one of my favorite days of the year. Eat turkey, watch football, nothing like it.
100%. So see you guys next week. Hope you guys have a great day.